Good morning, everybody. You have started the recording, so let everyone, we're recording this so that those that couldn't make it can see it later, posted on our website, VA SBDC. I'm Marc Willson. For those that don't know me, most of you in Culpeper should know me by now. I've been coming there for years and years, and David and I have worked closely together many times over the past number of, I formed the Willson Company in 2009. So I've been doing this strategy counseling in retail, restaurants, and hospitality now for 12 years. And hopefully we'll continue to do it as long as I'm healthy enough to do it. So I'm glad to be here, and I would like to tell you this. I keep Culpeper, Virginia as one of my top 10. So I've traveled the country. I've been to hundreds of small towns, and I'll tell you this, Culpeper is in my top 10. And I want to congratulate the people there, and Jessica and Renaissance, and you guys do so many events that I'm thrilled to be talking to you about Coopetition and TEAM Eventacular today. And I'll be coming down this afternoon for some in-person one-on-one. So I'm excited to do that again as well. I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired of talking to a laptop, and you guys are probably tired of listening to a laptop. And I miss the in-person interchange, and hopefully we'll be able to get the pandemic somewhat behind us and move on. But it'll never be the way it was. I've read things that say that the virus and the pandemic will have its impact on us for years to come. So I read that 10 years it'll have an impact on us. And this is something else interesting that I found out that I'll share with you. The virus is a mammal-to-mammal virus, the current virus we're dealing with in the pandemic. And because it's mammal-to-mammal, it's almost impossible to eradicate. So it's my personal opinion that we'll be taking boosters or pandemic or Delta or whatever we're going to call it, shots here for the unforeseeable future. So this is not going to be easily put behind us, and we'll have to keep it in mind as we do everything going forward. And here's my opinion again, and then I'll get to my slides. My opinion is you ought to side with the side of safety. So regardless of what the statewide mandates are for masks and distancing and antiseptic and clean spaces and all that, I think that individually you ought to make your store and restaurant safe for you, the owner, your employees, and your customers. And let the customer decide what they want to do. But I would provide an environment that's clean and safe for them to shop in. So with that said, let's get on with it. So Coopetition is a word that I thought I created, but I guess I didn't. After some research, I've found that the tech industry has been using this word for a while. And it's the fusion of competition and cooperation. And I wrote a little bit about the term and what it means, and I'm going to share that with you now, and then we can certainly discuss it. In the spirit of Coopetition, as we try to explain the collapse of some of our small businesses from this horrid pandemic, we also try to point out the valiant efforts of those that have seized the catastrophe as an opportunity to change their businesses for the better and carry on. Over half the businesses that I've spoken with in the past several weeks or months are ahead of last year. And it's true. It's true. And when we talked about pivoting many months ago, pivoting didn't mean just to change the way you currently do business to be more relevant to a changed customer due to the pandemic. Pivoting also meant to bring in new revenue streams that you didn't have before, to improve your business. And one of those prime revenue streams would be e-commerce. Now, it's been critical for chain stores and big box stores to adopt e-commerce because traffic over 2020, traffic at certain points was down to zero and then ongoing about 50% walk-in traffic. And everything you read, all the studies say that going forward, e-commerce will represent 50 to 70% of sales. And I don't believe that's the case in mom and pop stores and independently owned stores in small towns. I think at best, you're probably 5 or 10% e-commerce. And you may double that, you may go up to 20%, but I don't see mom and pop stores ever being as high as 50 to 70% e-commerce. There's too much special about your physical locations and why people come out to see those physical locations and use them as a form of entertainment. And, a great thing to do for a Saturday is to explore all the town stores and restaurants and see what your local stores have to offer. And what's happening in America, quite frankly, is less people are flying and less people are going far away. Less people are getting in a plane, going to Europe and stuff like that. So we're finding that vacations and people exploring their own states and local attractions is growing and has grown dramatically. So I know, David knows, the owners know, Culpeper knows that small towns are event driven. And it's either events driven, hosted by the town, so it's a town-wide event, or there should be events hosted by individual stores. And they should be going on all the time. You should have something going on all the time to make it give people a reason to visit your store. So let me finish my thoughts on cooperation. Coopetition, I mean. First and foremost, they have prepared their businesses to be safe and antiseptic for their employees and customers. They are not afraid to make mistakes by taking risky twists and turns to better serve the evolving customer. Along with this, communities that are committed to helping one another so that the entire town can prosper are outperforming towns that don't. The spirit of coopetition far outweighs a less cooperative approach by individual stores. A rising tide raises all the boats. So my point here is that towns work together, owners that know each other, colleagues that know each other, towns that work together and plan events together and present a united front when they do an event, prosper and do better than towns where individual merchants are trying to do their own thing and people aren't communicating with each other and people don't know what each other's destination statements are and all those kinds of things. So let me jump to that just for a quick minute. A destination statement is a statement that you make about your business that sets it apart from everybody else. And I borrowed the term from a colleague of mine out west, and he has a whole program around it. But a destination statement is you being able to say, I am the only store, I am the only restaurant, I am the only hotel in Culpeper, in the county. I'm the only store in the state of Virginia. I'm the only store in the United States, or I'm the only store in the world. Since we've gone e-commerce, you can claim the world as your audience. I'm the only store in the world that, and I want you to finish that sentence with something that you do that's compelling enough to get people that have never visited your store to come check out what's going on in there. So there are lots of things you can claim. Listen, if you're a business that's been operating for a number of years, that's a big differentiator. If you can say, we've been in business in 80 years, we were established in 1933, longevity is credibility. If you can claim you're the only store that does what you do in the town, then you ought to proclaim that. But the bigger the claim you can make, the more people it will reach. And if you can honestly say, I'm the only store in the country that does what you do, then shout it from the rafters. So this whole idea of coopetition is knowing what each other's destination statements are and being ambassadors for the whole town. And I'm here to tell you, I'm glad to do this seminar for Culpeper, but I think Culpeper does it pretty well. And I think there is communication, and I think the Renaissance is a great organization, and there are tons of events that go on in Culpeper. So let's talk about how to run an event the best way for those that haven't heard me speak before. And for those that have, just a quick reminder, because in 2020, a lot of events went to the wayside due to the pandemic. So in 2021, I've been telling my clients, dust off the manuals and the agendas that you have for your appointments, and let's start throwing some events again. And quite frankly, I had recommended that the entire country grand reopen in July. My idea was, let's coincide with Biden's proclamation of getting 70% of our population vaccinated, and that over July 4th, families could get together and hug each other and shake hands and kiss and have family gatherings and see relatives you haven't seen and all those great things that we miss so dearly. And I wanted every town to grand reopen and celebrate two things. Back in July, we really felt like we had the pandemic in retreat. So I was celebrating that we had taken the front stage and put the pandemic in retreat. Now, since then, the Delta variant has raised its ugly head, and there's surging issues with COVID running throughout the country, especially in Texas and Florida. But everybody is seeing somewhat of a surge, and the only good news is we're getting more and more people vaccinated. But nonetheless, we were celebrating putting the virus in retreat. And the other thing I wanted to celebrate is that the American population has got on to the shop local movement, and it's alive and real, and everybody knows about small businesses and the struggles and the difficulties to run one and be open during a difficult time. 2020 probably more difficult than 2021, but we have reason to celebrate that the American population wants to support you. So with that said, I wanted every town in America to grand reopen in July. Well, I don't think that happened. It did in some towns, but I don't think it happened universally. So I'm here to tell you that individual stores shouldn't wait for a town event to throw an event. They need to have their own events, because we know, especially with the seasonality that we actually enjoy here in Virginia, with 4 distinct seasons and 4 different, seasonal type things that go on, that there will be periods of time when the town's just not busy. And to make it busy, you've got to create action and entertainment and reasons for people to come in town because you're doing something special. And whether that's the town or the individual stores, that is my message loud and clear. So let's talk about events. They can be controversial. Some folks in towns believe that certain events don't bring their customer to town. And I wrote this seminar years ago for actually the sesquicentennial of the Civil War, because every town in Virginia was having some kind of commemoration of the war ending, actually. And I got the word, and I know from visiting towns for many years that there are certain stores that don't even open on the day of the event because they feel like it's not their customer and people are in town just to go drinking, and they'll come in the store and mess it up and want to use their bathrooms, and they're not their customer anyway, so they won't spend any money. And I went to myself, that is crazy. Listen, there are thousands of people that come to events. So I want you to think about events as exposure, not necessarily that it'll be your best day of the year. Now, there are businesses that do have the best day of the year on the day of a big event in their town because they've had a strategy for it. They had a plan, and they marketed it prior to the event happening. So my word on marketing for events is twofold. One is, if the town's having an event, glom onto that, do co-op advertising, and get some marketing done at a much larger scale than you could do on your own. So if the town's co-op advertising in the paper or the radio for the event, then participate. But you ought to treat the event in your store like it's your own event as well. And you should be marketing on your social media sites, your website, and emails and text messaging about what's going on in your store the day of the event. So towns have successful events if everybody in town looks like they're part of the event, or in fact is part of the event, and has things going on in there. Let's use July 4th as an example. Okay, so let's say the town's having a July 4th parade. I want every store in town, every restaurant in town, every hotel in town to have decorations in their window in concert with the event. So I want every window in the town July 4th to show that the town is having an event, and every one of the retailers and restaurants and hotels are involved, and the town supports the events and they're excited about it. And every store and restaurant and hotel has marketed the event through their channels as well as the town marketing it through their channels. So local events are really designed to bring local and return visitors to town and new visitors. Bring out the locals so that, because they're expecting you to have promotions or deals or contests or giveaways or live entertainment, vendor reps, local celebrities. They're expecting some action. They're expecting some fun. They're expecting some things to go on. And they're marketed far beyond what a merchant could afford to market on their own. And event visitors should be considered potential shoppers. So I'm here to tell you that if thousands of extra people are in town and they want to come in your store, shame on you if you can't sell them something. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm going to bring you people through your front door and you're going to complain about it? No. You need to take it as an opportunity, and you need to figure out how you can do business on that day. And if you don't feel like you're going to really knock it out of the park on that day, then gather as many new customers' email addresses and excitement and interest in your store. And the other thing that's happening right now is there's hundreds of people finding your store on the internet that never shopped on the internet before because they learned how to do it in the fourth quarter of 2020. So you have people on the internet finding you that didn't even know you existed. And you need to know that. You need to know you have two types of customers coming in your store now. Those that are on a mission because they found the products on your website that they want, and they decided to come to your store and buy them instead of buying them online. And then you have a customer that's out for the day that wants to be entertained and shop and get the dopamine release when they buy something they really want. And people like to shop. People like it. And you need to think about retailtainment and how you'll entertain them and how you'll make it a great shopping experience. And your goal should be that everybody that comes to the town for an event or to your store says to themselves, wow, this town is really fabulous, or this store I found is fabulous. And you want every one of them wanting to tell their friends, neighbors, colleagues, and relatives about the places they found in Culpeper. So, I used to say to my sales staff, I ran 105 clothing stores at one time, and I'd tell them, see that person coming through the front door? I want you to give them the best 45 minutes to an hour they have all day. And I want it to be memorable. So you need associates that are excited not only about your store and the culture and working there and your products, and the reason they're working there is they love your products to begin with and shop there before, but you need to have people that are excited about the events as well and talk about the events and everything that's going on in town that day. So enough said on that. So one of the ways to execute a good event is to have people that are business owners, have people that are business owners that are on the committee that plans the event. David, I think you'll agree with me that if we can have some business owners on that committee, being willing to raise their hand when they need to and say, wait a minute, you put the food trucks right there? That's where 3 of our best restaurants are. You need to put the food trucks at the other end of town so they don't affect our local businesses. And the one thing I want everyone to remember today, if they don't already know it, is that these events are for the local businesses to do more business. I could give a hoot about the chicken on the stick vendor that you hired to come in and be part of your event. I could give a hoot on whether they do a lot of business or not. I'd rather the people eat in the local restaurants. So you need to be thinking about events and how they can best support your local stores, restaurants, and hotels. So be part of the vision and the planning and suggest ways the event could help merchants, and make sure the town event website has links to all the websites of all the stores in town. Because what's going to happen for many people is they'll Google the town itself and land on your tourism site or the town website. And the best way to get them in touch with your stores and restaurants is to have links to all those stores and restaurants' websites. And I'm a big believer in making a map for the day of the event that shows and highlights the local businesses and where they are. And you might have a link, you might have a QR code that takes them to your destination statement. What could be better than a map that has URLs or QR codes that told the visitors, here's what I do, and here's what I do better and differently than everybody else, and here's why you should visit my store today. And then you can make QR codes that are good for just the day of the event, and you could list all the things that you're doing in your store that they might not know about, that makes you a destination. So be a part of the planning, be a part of the execution, be a part of the gang, be involved, cooperate. And you know what I call people that use coopetition? They're cooperators. So I want a town full of cooperators working together to have a great event. So Team Eventacular stands for towns, events, and merchants partnering for profit. Again, it's important that both the town and the merchants are working toward the same goal for the event. And that takes communication. What are the benefits to the people in town? Well, you're going to find new customers. There'll be new customers that you haven't ever met before. It will give you a reason to have events and promotions and contests and raffles and things in your store or have a sale. I mean, a lot of your locals believe that on the day of a big event, all the stores will be promoting something or having a sale. It's a great time for the town to come across as a town that's unified and is a strong community and works together for the benefit of the whole, and wants to see the town and every merchant and every restaurant and every hotel in town thrive. We're no longer in the 2020 survive mode. We're in a thrive mode. And those that have pivoted well, those have found new revenue streams. By the way, new revenue streams goes beyond e-commerce. You know, it's unfortunate, but some stores were not financially able to weather what COVID brought to the town. And you've probably lost a few of your stores over time. Well, here's my recommendation. Those stores had product categories that they probably sold extremely well. You know, the old 80-20 rule in retail is that 20% of your inventory produces 80% of your revenue, and that 20% of your customers produces 80% of your revenue. So one of the things that I'd be trying to find out if a store closed in my town is what were the top 20% items, and are they still available from the vendor? And who were the customers that shopped there? And can I get a copy of your email list and invite them to shop with us and tell them about the lines we picked up that you used to sell that we're now selling in our store? So I think that's an opportunity. And pivoting meant finding new revenue streams. And that means selling some things you might not have ever sold before. And this goes with e-commerce, and this goes with new products. Just because you have them doesn't mean people will know about them unless you market them. So especially e-commerce, people say, well, I'll build an e-commerce site. I'll have an additional 20, 30% of my sales. You won't if you don't tell people you have a website, and you won't if you don't work on SEO and make sure that people here, you need to make sure you're the result of a Google search, because everybody Googles everything. So if you want to be the result of a Google search, you have to have a good website and a good Google My Business page so that you're on the first page of results, because Americans are lazy and they think you ought to be on the first page of results, and you got to be there to get found. So David knows this. I've been saying it for 10 years. Get found and be open. And get found means get found by the result of an internet Google search. And that goes for the event as well. You need to create a buzz on your social channels and your website about what's going on in your store the day of the event. The last benefit to the individual stores is free advertising. If the town itself is doing a big event, then they're advertising it, and you need to be part of that. You need to be co-op advertising. It plays beautifully into Coopetition, and you need to be promoting the event yourself in your store. Do you think that there's this many people in this town on a normal day? Heck no. This is a busy town. This is because of an event. So I'm going to reference two events as examples, and we'll talk about them in a second. But let me use Leesburg as an example, because that's where I live. And I travel from out of Leesburg, but I love coming to Culpeper, and you're in my top 10. So I love coming there. And I have some great friends that run stores there and restaurants, and can't wait to come to town today later. But anyways, we have a home and garden show in Leesburg every year. So it's an annual event, and many events for towns are annual. So you have them year over year, and that's what makes them get bigger and bigger and more well-known. And we get 30,000 people into Leesburg in 2 days. We we start Friday night and we turn the 4 main streets of downtown in Leesburg into people's backyards. We put sod down on the street. We build decks. We put bushes around. We put fountains. It's a party. It's big. We got there's food vendors. There's everything going on. But 30,000 people aren't normally in Leesburg on a weekend. So I know it works. It's your job to position your company and your business to take full advantage of the event. So here's the whole issue of window displays. From sunrise till sunset with you. Window displays need to have a focus. And during the event, I think it ought to be the event. So for July 4th, and I'd expect some fireworks and some, red, white, and blue, and all sorts of, things promoting, the July 4th. But windows are, 40% of what you sell is a result of it being in your window. So windows are important. They need to be clean. You need to determine whether your window is seen from the street or from the sidewalk. And events really turn that upside down, because if a town puts booths up on Main Street, then the storefronts sometimes are blocked and the sidewalk is sometimes somewhat blocked. So the window needs to be big, simple. Sometimes graphics are better than actual product in your window, because it's the only thing that can be seen from the street. And I'm going to talk about booths and stores and all that in a minute, so we won't get into that right now. So, draw or sketch the window before you build it. And make sure that you, I think your URL to your website on the window is a good idea. I think that what you've done to your store, maybe a few bullet points of what you've done to make your store safe, because I'm really recommending that you land on the side of safety. So just a short thing. And the people that have met with me in Culpeper know that I believe this. I think you ought to have a 30-second video on the homepage of your website. And it's 30 seconds because that's the attention span of an adult. And I've read recently that it's down to 9 seconds because the average American looks at their cell phone every 9 seconds. Can you believe that? So you only have 30 seconds to get your message across. Here's what I want that video to do. I want you, the owner, if that's who they're going to see when they come in your store or in your booth, or the manager that runs the store for you, if that's who they're going to see, that's who I want in the video. And I want you telling people what your destination statement is. And I think you ought to have a video the day of the event, telling people that what you're doing and what you're doing special that day, because they're easy to do. You can put an event on your or a video on your website just by uploading it onto YouTube and then embedding it into your homepage. And YouTube will tell you exactly how to do that. And it's not hard once you do it once. But I want it to be something that tells people what makes you so special. But I think you ought to spend, the closing 10 seconds, 5 seconds, just saying, and we wear masks and our store has been cleaned antiseptically, and we practice distancing, and we provide a very safe place for you to shop. There's nothing wrong with telling the customer that up front, because I don't want the customer to be surprised by what they find when they get to their store, because we know that 9 out of 10 people will have seen the homepage of your website before they come in. Fair enough? So windows are important. Live entertainment is important. It works. It always works for events. So now is a good time to talk about how an event can be organized, how it can be run. And there are really 2 different ways to run a town-wide event. So we'll start with Leesburg as an example, because that is something I've already told you about. Leesburg runs a closed event. A closed event is when the town cordons off where they're setting the event up. And in our town, it's the 4 main city blocks. So it's a block in each direction of our main streets. And you go through an entrance, and there is a fee to get in for adults. It's $7 to get into the Home and Garden Show. So 2 things that does, that a closed event does. It allows you to charge admission. And secondly, it gives you the exact number of people that entered the event and came to the event, because you have the number of people came through the entry. So closed events are easily organized. I think information booths are important. I think you ought to have a booth somewhere in the center of the event with the maps that you made, with the local businesses highlighted and the local restaurants highlighted, and just directions for people that are in town for the first time. So I think an information booth is important. The closed event allows you to have people park outside of town, at a high school maybe, or public parking lots, but it keeps the traffic off those 4 streets because they can't get on the street anyway. So parking is always an issue for big events, and parking people at big parking lots and then either busing them in on school buses is a way to get people into town, or just have them walk to town after they've parked in a remote parking lot. So that's an example of a closed event. An open event, I'll use Occoquan, Virginia as an example. Occoquan has an arts and crafts festival every year, and it's a big deal. All of Main Street has booths on it, and it's all about arts and crafts, and it's a big event. It's an open event though, meaning it hasn't been cordoned off. Anybody can enter Main Street from any direction they want. And what they do in Occoquan is they park you at the high school and bus you over. And what they do is they charge $7 for the bus ride. That way they can also monetize their event and make some money based on the travel or the buses. So an open event isn't cordoned off, and people can come and go any way they want. Information booth, still very important. So let's talk about the booths put on Main Street for many events. They're usually the 10 by 10, tents that you can get. And here's my recommendation, and here's what I've learned, that towns that are the most successful with their events, this is what they do. So there are spaces for rent or lease out on the street. So people from outside town can rent a space, vendors, food vendors, outside vendors, vendors that will bring things with them that do business via pop-up, and festivals. They're used to traveling. They're used to bringing their goods to wherever the action is. So there'll be people from outside of town that have rented booths in town. But here's the thing that enlightened towns do that I wholeheartedly agree with. They let the space in front of the store, the local stores, and the spaces in front of the local restaurants, and the spaces in front of the local hotels, they give those spaces to the local businesses. So the local business gets the space in front of their store or restaurant or hotel. Now, some towns might charge them a lower fee for it. Some towns give them the space as a way of supporting their local businesses. And it's what you can afford. It's what the town can afford. But make those decisions carefully, because it's a big impact decision. So anyway, if you set up a booth in front of your store or restaurant, you're not trying to really sell or feed the customer in your booth. That's the lure to get them in your front door. So I don't want local stores or restaurants putting the back wall up on their booth. I want the booth to be an awning to the front door. And you'll have people in your booth. Working a booth is not easy. And you've got to greet and talk to every customer that comes in. It might be a place where you have a raffle going on, or spin the wheel, or live music, or a demonstration, or something to attract customers into your booth. But then ideally, you want to get them in the store, not in the booth, because where would you rather sell your product or feed your customers? In your restaurant or in your store with beautifully displayed products and vignettes and adjacencies and traffic flow and signage and all the great things that you do to make your store a one-of-a-kind store. Also, have them pay in the store or restaurant. So they have to go in the store because you want them to see your store and your restaurant. So ideally, the goal is to get people in your store, not just in your booth. So I recommend not putting the back up and inviting them in your front door. And use sidewalk signage. Use signage that says, cooler inside if it's a summer event, air conditioned inside, free water inside, refreshments inside, much more inside. Give them an idea of what's in there and why they should go in. And that could be an easel in your booth. It could be a sidewalk sign, which is an A-frame sign, but you got to let them know what's going on. So the objectives of your booth and tent are the same as in your store. You want to introduce product to the customer. You want to introduce new customers to your concept, your products, your services at your store. And you want to collect information from a customer by with a raffle or a contest so that you can have a means of collecting their email address. Because one of the goals of an event is exposure. And there are stores that don't have their best day on the day of the event because it's just too crazy. It's just too crazy. So they're looking for the people that find them during the event. They're hoping that they will come back at the following weekend or the next weekend after that with their friends and neighbors and colleagues and people they wanted to show the town and the new stores they found. So it's just as important that events give you exposure as they give you the biggest sale day of your year. And you ought to be collecting those names and addresses for future contact. The other thing you ought to do is you ought to have a be back coupon that you put in everybody's sack or bag that you give them when they purchase from you. And it's some kind of coupon incentivizing them to come back or bring a friend or join the loyalty program or visit your website or post on Facebook that you were in this store or incentivize people to do live video from inside your store or booth with Facebook Live. So, there's lots of things you can do to make the customer happy and entertained. Make your booth stand out. The target zone is 50 inches from the ground. So that's the target zone. The sweet spot is 6 inches from your belt buckle to 6 inches above your head. So you want everyone to have the best product, the highest margin product at eye level, and use the same tricks and techniques you use in your store, in your booth. And when I say put up a card table or a conference table and get your product on display, I don't mean just stacks set on the table. You need to merchandise it with the same type of risers and fixtures you have inside the store. It needs to be another piece of your store. But again, I'd rather you sell them in your store and just give them an idea of what you have out in the tent or booth. Listen, have someone dress up as a hot dog if you have to. Have music, have things that attract attention. have live demonstrations, have giveaways, have tchotchkes or swag is what we call it. Have things you can give customers for free that come to your booth. So who comes to events? Well, there's lots of different kinds of people that come to an event. Here's a picture of some of your owners' biggest nightmares. A bunch of moms with strollers are coming in my store. Oh, no. But those moms have sisters, brothers, moms, dads, kids, friends, colleagues. They are exposure for you. So what type of customers come to events? Well, visitors that are out for the day and don't plan to spend any money. You're going to have some people that have come to the event as free entertainment for their family. Now, they'll probably eat because everybody eats. And, they're probably in search of carnival food. But some come for the entertainment aspect, and that it's relatively inexpensive or free entertainment. You have visitors that are responding to the event's promotions, and most of them plan on spending money. So they've seen the marketing, they've seen the town's marketing, and they've seen your marketing on your site. So they're all ready to go. They're here to spend money and find what you got, and they've seen your destination statements, and they're looking for something. Then you have visitors that come out for the food, like I already said, and you have locals that come out to check out the madness, because they do expect you to be doing something different or special the day of the event in your store. And they're looking for promotions and deals and those kinds of things. And the other set of folks that should be out there are the local officials and the town council and the chamber and economic development and the mayor, and everybody that's important as a government official in town ought to be out there in the event and being very visible. Visible. Part of the community, giving back, social conscious, charitable drive, all these things that are important ought to be on display in full form during an event in your town. Make it difficult to quickly move through the areas that have the booths and tents. Now, you'll probably have to keep the center of Main Street open for fire and police, but if you just run a racetrack of booths down one side and up the other, that's what you've created as a racetrack. And I don't want customers being able to do the whole event in, half an hour. I think they ought to be, forced to turn or move in different directions. And you want the people to slow down and visit every booth and talk with people and get to know what's going on. And again, your destination statement, have the programmer map to keep people moving, have directories all over the place in different locations, keep the cash wrap in your store so they have to come in your store or restaurant to pay, and then have additional signage outside, attractive outdoor displays that say much more inside, and promote what's going on inside the store as opposed to out in the booth or tent. Your etiquette is the same as in the store. You need to smile, you need to make eye contact, you need to have a good non-solicitory opening line, which means don't say, "Can I help you?" That's the worst thing you can say. You got to be a little more creative than, especially during an event and out in a tent or do you know our store? Have you seen our store? Have you been to this town before? Have you been to this event before? Well, here's what we do, and here's what we do that's different than everybody else. And here's what we're doing the day of the event that's different. So, good opening line, good open-ended questions. Questions can't be answered by yes or no. They start with who, what, where, why, how, and when. So they can't be answered by yes or no. So you're creating conversation. People are very social right now, not dangerously social, but they're starved for conversation and seeing friends and neighbors and seeing people and talking with people. And, we're social by, our DNA. So open-ended questions, suggestive, consultative selling, and ask them to go in the store, ask them to go into the restaurant, ask for the sale, but always be empathetic and kind, because the customer is somewhat shaken from the pandemic and never will be totally the same as they were before. So be cautious, be safe, be friendly, be kind, and be empathetic. Stay focused on the event, stay focused on the event guests. Don't get overly conversational with your booth mates. Stay off your phone, don't be on your phone, and don't turn your back to the customers unless you're waiting on another customer. So, some of the things that you do in your store ought to be duplicated. And look at this booth. It has, it's a jewelry vendor, and they have all the displays they would normally have in the store. And that's how you do a good booth or a good tent, is you merchandise it. So the next slide is, what do you guys have any ideas? And we'll save that till the end. If you want to discuss or comment or have ideas for good local events, or what you do in an event that works. So, I believe colleagues can train each other better than I can. So, anybody that has a good idea or wants to share an idea with the group, put it in the question and answer chat room, and we'll talk about it when we finish this up. So one of my big pieces of advice on events is that you do a post-mortem or a recap of the event as soon after the event is over as possible. So I think you ought to get the committee back together, and I think you ought to go over what worked and what didn't work, and what could be better and what was great. Because small towns are event-driven, and good events can bring prosperity to your town. What worked? What feedback do you want to give the event organizers? And most events happen annually, so providing feedback right after the event will help the organizers plan for next year or the next event. So I have a couple things to show you, and then we'll get to the questions and answers. I'm a botanist and biologist by education. Those that know me know that. And I, many years ago, wanted to know, how did I end up for 4 decades in retail and restaurants? Turns out I went to Ancestry, did some research. Turned out my great-grandfather was a general in the Civil War. And when the war ended in 1865, he gathered up 300 people in the state of Pennsylvania. He mustered out of Pennsylvania. He took 300 people on a wagon train from Pennsylvania to Bozeman, Montana, and opened the Willson Mercantile in 1866. It's been in my blood all along. The store building still exists on Main Street in Bozeman, Montana. And there's a Wilson Avenue in Bozeman, Montana. And and here's their destination statement: Bozeman's oldest, largest, and best store. And there's my great-grandfather right here in this slide. He's sitting down with his legs crossed in the bowler hat on his loading dock with his staff. And there's his staff. But in my research, I found a quote from him that made a lot of sense to me, and I think it should make sense to you. And it's why I do what I do today. My business standards should have in them a note of sympathy for our common humanity. My business relationships, dealings, and ambitions shall always cause me to take in consideration my highest duties as a member of society. In every position in business life, in every responsibility that comes before me, my chief thought shall be to fill that responsibility and discharge that duty, so that when I have ended with each of them, I shall have lifted the level of human ideals and achievements a little higher than I found it. So my goal is if I meet with you or you came to this webinar, that I left you with some ideas and some things that you can do and implement that'll improve your business. And there's no hidden agenda with the SBDC or me. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to make you survive and thrive. And that's our job at the SBDC, is to make small businesses succeed. And they're the best kept secret in Virginia. Network of 27 offices with a network of 1,200 throughout the United States. It's a great way to get help. And I'm a huge believer of use experts if you need help, especially if they're free. So with that said, Shira, David, do we have any questions, any comments, anything anybody wants to talk about?
Not seeing any questions in the chat so far. So if anybody has,
maybe I covered it too thoroughly this time.
If anybody has questions or comments or anything they'd like to discuss with Marc, feel free to either put them in the chat or you can go ahead and unmute and just ask yourself. We've got about another 30 minutes of time that we can use. If we don't need it all, we don't have to. But Marc is quite
available, and I'm coming to town. I'll be in this shirt. You'll see me. So
yes,
if you don't want to ask a question now, stop me on the sidewalk and ask me.
Yes, Tammy is suggesting having a giveaway is also a good way to grab people's information, maybe with a gift purchase as well.
Yes, running contests and raffles is a way of collecting an email address. And that's one of your goals for the day of the event, is getting as many new names as you can get. You know, the email addresses you own are about the only data you actually own. All the data on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest is owned by those formats. So continue to collect. And one of the most effective ways to market now is texting. So if you want to put a space on the entry form for phone, well, I'd like to call you if you win. If you could get their phone number, you can text them as well. There probably should be, well, they're not probably, you always should have a disclaimer on any entry form about whether you're going to contact them via this information or not. And you ought to say, well, I have to contact you if you win, but have an opt out, have the ability to opt out of an email list. It's just the right thing to do.
Any other comments from our participants today? David, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, though, if anybody has interest in talking to Marc, we have a couple of appointments this afternoon. Let us know. We'll be out on East Davis Street.
Yeah,
I'm coming down. My first appointment's at 12:30, so I'll be down in town just before that, and then plan to spend the afternoon. I haven't been to Culpeper in a while, and I'm just like everybody else. I want to get out of my house and see some people again. And I haven't seen David in months, so come down and bend his ear. And he's a well-read man, and I love to learn stuff from David Reardon.
Yes, David certainly knows what he's talking about. So for anybody with us today that's in Culpeper, if you would like to go ahead and schedule a meeting with Marc while he's in town and you haven't done that yet, you can feel free to email or call me and I can set that up for you while he's in town. And for anyone that is either not in Culpeper or not in the Central Virginia region, you can still contact your local office to be set up for meetings with Marc. The best way to set up some one-on-one time with Marc is to contact your local office. He's an extra resource that we have, but you'll want to meet with one of your local advisors first, and they'll be able to help direct you to how Marc can best help you.
And I want to be clear, I can do it virtually as well. So you may not be available today. You might not be available for an hour today. And a meeting doesn't have to be an hour. It can be as quick as you want it to be. You may just have one or two questions to ask me. But know that you can contact your local SBDC office and ask for a virtual one-on-one with me. And I'll come in via, Zoom or Facebook Live and meet with you over the internet. you can show me around your store. Although I'm familiar with most of the stores and restaurants in Culpeper, I'm not familiar with all of them, and I'm sure there's some new ones since I've been there. And I can't wait to come down and see what's going on. But anyway, you can contact us and have something done virtually as well.
Any other questions? Comments, concerns, things you'd like to share?
Listen, I'm not offended by not having questions. Sometimes we have lots of questions. Sometimes we don't have any. It just depends on the audience and whether they have questions or comments or not. So I'm okay as long as you guys learn something new and have some things that you want to try and do differently. Then I did what I wanted to do today.
One question from Tammy. Any literature you have out should also be branded with your logo and contact information. It's not a question.
Absolutely. You ought to take every opportunity you have to brand your store. One of the ones I talk about a lot is if you're shipping more product today, the box ought to brand you up one side and down the other. And if you're using free supplies that you can get from the major carrier, go to somebody like Sticker Mule that sells labels and tape with your logo on it. And tape up the box and put your label on the box with your logo, and get tissue paper that has your logo printed all over it. Take it as an opportunity to brand your company. So anything that any rack card, any be back coupon you put in their bag should have your logo, tagline, and always use the same colors in logos when you're trying to market, because that increases recall, and that's what marketing is all about, is making you top of mind so that someone visits you based on your destination statement when they're in Culpeper.
Excellent. Mary, I see your question about Mark having time to visit you in Culpeper while he's there today. I'll go ahead and contact you separately after this meeting is over. But yes, Mark does still have time for additional meetings in Culpeper today, so we can go ahead and get that scheduled.
You know, Mark, you mentioned the branding of packing materials.
Yeah.
There is a place that I bought, they sell pens down in Enrico County, and they package with a card by the packer thanking you for purchasing. But the unique thing too is they pop a lollipop inside each box they pack.
Nice.
So their brandy's inside, and you get this little lollipop in there.
Great. And I didn't mention it, but I highly, in the box. Yeah, it's a tough time for lots of folks, and they ought to be thanked for their patronage.
And Mark, Candace wanted to know, what was the name of the company you mentioned that can print the logo on lots of things?
Sticker Mule.
Sticker Mule. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat.
Yeah, and if I thought they were asking for more information from me. So my whole program is on the Virginia SBDC website, and the Willson Company has their own website, and Willson is spelled with 2 L's. So it's wilsoncompany.com if you want more information about what I do and what types of information and topics I can discuss.
And I'm also going ahead and putting that in the chat for everyone. Any other questions while we're still on? If not, we can go ahead and wrap up a little early. I know I certainly learned a lot from Mark's presentation today. Hope everybody else did as well.
We're just giving back 20 minutes of your day.
No problems there. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email that will have an anonymous survey evaluation if everyone wouldn't mind filling it out, it is incredibly helpful for us with planning our events here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you as always, Marc, for your expertise and time with us.
You're
And-
welcome. You know, I love doing this, so it's fun for me. So
Of course.
thank you,
and
Shira.
You'll be down in Culpeper soon.
I
Have
will.
a good-
Can't wait. See you
Have a
then.
good,
We'll see
have a
you
good rest of
shortly.
your day, everybody.